So welcome everyone to the first breakout session of the District 3 conference, the new president orientation. If you are here on behalf of your president, this will all be recorded and we will be sharing this on our website later on, either today or tomorrow. Today we will be having Hugh from Triangle AdFed, Joey from AAF in the Midlands, and then Alex from Southwest Virginia. They are our 3 state governors of District 3. Alex, of course, in Virginia, Joey, South Carolina, Hugh in North Carolina. How we're going to do this today, we have about 45 minutes to go through the presentation. If you have questions, feel free to use the chat box below or feel free to just unmute yourself and talk. This is an open conversation. So with that, I will hand it over to our state governors.
Great. Thanks, Danielle.
Awesome.
So we've got a little PowerPoint slide I'm going to run through, and then Alex and Hugh and myself are going to split it up, and I'll start first. So thanks for coming. All right, resume share. All right, so can everybody see the PowerPoint? We good there? Okay. All right, so this is the new president orientation, the business of running a successful club. There's a blank screen. Okay, so your role as president. Obviously, you are the leader, you're the overall manager, and you're in charge of financial soundness of the club. Your treasurer is obviously a big part of that, but you two need to be working closely together. You know, ultimately, you're the one responsible for making sure the taxes get filed, that, you know, the bank account is sound, and going over the statements with your treasurer, and making sure everybody stays on budget. It's also your job to motivate, educate, and guide board members, especially newer board members. You know, AAF is a huge organization, and when we talk about training and the, you know, the board retreat at the beginning of the year, those are critical junctures for making sure everybody understands AAF and district and national, and that we're a grassroots organization, you know, across the nation. You provide direction for the board members and the committee chairs to meet club goals. That's one of the most important things to do, especially at the beginning of the year, is to really make your chairs think about their goals for the year, make them realistic, make them measurable, because not only will that help you be successful as a club, it will help you when it comes time to enter club achievement. So those are something that you want to kind of check in on throughout the year as well. And then ensure membership needs are met via club activities and events. You know, now more than ever, you haven't heard that phrase enough. This is going to be a challenging year for making sure that your members feel engaged, making sure that they feel like they are getting a return on their investment as members of the club. And so I think keeping those lines of communication open is critical. Your responsibilities. So obviously you appoint the committee chairs. You will conduct a board orientation or retreat. Some of you may have already had your retreat, which is great. You are the one presiding over all board, executive, and membership meetings. So, you know, if you haven't read through Robert's Rules of Order, you know, it's like $12.50 on Amazon for a paperback copy. I'd pick one up and check it out. You'll also be responsible for representing your club at all D3 and AAF national meetings. So you should have already received an invite to, I think, the quarterly D3 phone calls. And then there will be other AAF national meetings. Usually most clubs will try to send a representative to Admerica, which is usually in June. Hopefully by that time next year, we'll be able to do it in person. And it's a great experience, and I'd recommend anybody that can attend. You ensure compliance with D3 and AAF national requests for information and dues. So you should get invoices when your dues become due. So I do think, Danielle, correct me if I'm wrong, but D3 is waiving dues this year for clubs just one time. So that is a wonderful thing that they're doing for everybody, and you will still have to do your national dues. So look for those, I think, sometime in the spring, those come through. And then you'll get requests to do things like submit your membership roster to national. It's very important that we have that information and that it's up to date and correct, both for the calculation of your dues and also to ensure that everybody's receiving the national emails and information that they send out pretty regularly. You're responsible for leadership development of your board members. To sustain your club, you need to always have some future leaders in the pipeline and make sure you're kind of mentoring them and shepherding them along the path towards becoming president one day. And then, like I said earlier, fiscal responsibility. So making sure that your dues and ADDI fees are paid on time, and making sure that taxes are filed. So club leadership for most people probably looks something like this. You've got your executive board, which consists of the president, programs, treasurer, and secretary, or something close to that. And then your committee chairs, and these kind of vary from club to club, but you've got your club achievement or judging chair, government relations, membership, American Advertising Awards, competition and gala, public service, public relations and communications, diversity or mosaic, education, and member at large. So skill development, what are some things that you need to work on for yourself as a leader? Like I said about Robert's Rules of Order, be comfortable with using and following parliamentary procedures. Know how to build an effective team. For a board to be successful, you really want it to be fun and for people to kind of get to know each other and trust each other. Networking is a real important part of what makes AAF valuable. Knowing how to reward volunteers, a thank you note, a handwritten thank you note means a whole bunch. Like I said earlier, identifying potential future leaders, resolving conflicts. Most boards, you've got 10 or 15 people on them who are all, outstanding at what they do, and you tend to have a lot of type A personalities. And so conflicts are going to arise, throughout the year, and you just have to do your best to manage that as it happens. Structuring productive meetings. There's nothing I hate more than wasting people's time in meetings. So, have an agenda prepared, make sure everyone gets their reports submitted on time, and try not to keep people longer than you need to. Negotiate, compromise is important, whether it's between board members or with board members and potential members or vendors. Identifying and resolving conflict of interest issues. Those things can come up from time to time, and you just need to address them as they come up. Balancing personal, professional, volunteer responsibilities. So, we all have personal lives, families, friends. We all have professional responsibilities, and we have volunteer responsibilities. And I think most of the time, your personal life is going to come first, family is going to come first. The people that write your paycheck are going to come second. And AAF, while it's incredibly important, it's in the end a volunteer responsibility. And so things are going to come up from time to time that that take precedent over your AAF commitment, and sometimes those things are going to fall on you as the president to make sure they get done. But you should make sure that your members, your board members, know that they can ask for help from you as president, from each other, from district or national, and from past board chairs. Hopefully there's a group of people who have served before, who are available to help. So just don't be afraid to ask for help. Communicating internally and externally, keep your members informed. Like I said earlier, especially is crucial this year, when the in-person is going to be infrequent and difficult to manage. Building consensus, motivating your peers, and this last one I think is probably the most important as the board president, is listening. Listen to your board, listen to your members, and try to do what you can to make them feel like they're being heard, that their opinions are valued, and that that you're taking action based on their feedback. So why do some boards fail? Excuse me. So lack of leadership by the president. You have to be comfortable taking a leadership role and managing folks that you may not have been in that position before. Lack of rules of order, lack of organization. Everyone should have bylaws. You should have a budget set at the beginning of the year. And while budgets aren't written in stone, they need to be, referred to, and everybody needs to be on the same page where, if you think you're going to save money here but spend it there, make sure that your treasurer and everybody else is on board with that, because you don't want people getting, their wires crossed when it comes to changing and updating budgets. No leadership development or orientation. The board orientation, the board retreat at the beginning of the year is critical to set the tone and set expectations, especially for new board members. Too many goals or undefined goals. I think 2 or 3 goals for each area is probably realistic, and make them measurable. That's something that gets judged when you submit club achievement at the end of the year. It's not even so much as about did you meet the goals, it's did you set the goals, were they clearly defined, and if you didn't meet them, what did you do to try to mitigate it so that you can make those goals next year, right? A strategic plan is a great way to keep things moving forward. Again, don't have long drawn out meetings. You definitely need diversity on your board, and diversity, you have to factor in a lot of different things, right? So obviously you want racial and gender diversity, you want diversity among levels of experience, you need diversity among the types of, jobs that you have represented on your board. So you need folks from agencies, you need folks from in-house, you need some folks from nonprofit or government, and really try to think about that when you're putting your board together. Like I said, listening to your membership and meeting their needs. I think when you're asking especially corporate members to join, you need to listen to them and ask them questions and try to follow up on the things that that they need from AAF. Don't focus on the past, focus on this year and what you can do to be successful now. Make sure you have plenty of resources, especially volunteers to help on committees, and conflicts of interest and personal agendas can definitely derail a board very quickly. Keys to success. Again, the board orientation usually conducted over the summer before your kickoff and your first luncheon. It's important to let people know about the 3 tiers of AAF, the local, your local chapter, the district, and the national level, the resources available, and all those sorts of things, and make sure, again, people understand their roles and responsibilities, the expectations that you'll submit your board reports ahead of time, that you will attend the meetings, and if you're not going to attend, you need to try to let the board chair, the board president know. And then again, like we said, budgeting, planning your programs out for the year. You're going to have to be flexible, obviously, this year with not being sure when we can go back to being in person and at what level. And then membership, maybe you might have to adjust your membership levels, the cost this year, to help people out. That's something you want to look at. And then being communicative and regularly talking with your members. Keys to success. You want to help manage the club. You are the leader, so you need to set the example. You are an ambassador, especially when you're meeting in person at events. When you're the president, you need to be sure to walk around and try to talk to everyone to make sure that they feel welcome, thank them for becoming a member, or encourage them to join if they haven't already. And try to, talk to your board members individually from time to time to just check in and see how they're doing. Be visible and yeah, work your events for sure. And that's going to be harder when they're on Zoom, so you're just going to have to do that follow up, maybe with an email or a phone call, and try to keep those lines of communication open. Chain of command. So read your bylaws, especially when you're president. You need to know how you're supposed to operate, and you can change the bylaws. You can have your membership and your board vote to change them if they're not working for you, but you need to be aware of what they are. Make sure your general membership feels like they have a say and that they elect the board of directors and that you are there to serve them. So effective committees, 2 really easy rules. It is not always easier for you to do it yourself, and there will no longer be any one-person committees, not just to help you with the workload now, but so when next year rolls around and you're looking for new board members to replace the ones that need to roll off, there are people who have already been serving. There's a pipeline, there's a succession plan, and that gets started by having folks serve on committees, even if it's just for one event or one thing at a time. Volunteerism is the lifeblood of your club. It helps with recruiting and retention. It helps with expanded benefits. People want to volunteer, they want to help. And new ideas are really important that way too. All right, recruiting volunteers. You want to believe in what you're asking. Obviously, if you're serving as president, by now you should be pretty engaged and believe in the mission of AAF. And these are just some other tips on when you're approaching somebody. Ask on behalf of the project, not of yourself personally. Don't feel like you have to apologize for asking. If somebody you're trying to recruit, either as a board member or a committee member, you know, if you have to twist their arm too much, it's probably not a good fit. You know, you always want to listen out if somebody says, well, I'm not sure I have time, then that's something that definitely, you know, maybe you wait and check with them next year when their schedules open up. Because if they're telling you from the beginning that they don't have time, that's a bad sign. You know what you're asking for, give specific details, be positive, you know, try to always give them recognition, whether it's thanking your volunteers, you know, over the Zoom call or in person, and then give them the opportunity to be creative. Don't micromanage. Board meetings. So go ahead and set those, you know, for the year. Get them on people's calendars, same time, same place. Have an agenda, keep the agendas consistent and updated. Make sure they align with the format of the meeting and make it easier to take minutes. Try to keep time and be cognizant of you know, folks that have to be out either to, you know, other commitments or get to their families. And then if you're participating in club achievement, think about using those 8 categories to kind of outline the agenda so that everyone kind of, you know, keeps those books, those areas in mind as you move towards those goals at the end of the year. Minutes. The good thing about doing all your meetings on Zoom is it's real easy to go back and do minutes because you can record everything. So don't include sidebar conversations, but include the important, you know, to-dos, who's going to do what and when, mark attendance, that sort of thing. And these can be important in the context of antitrust, tax advocacy, or other legal issues are raised. Yeah, so be sure to take minutes. So drafts of minutes, notes, audio, video recordings. Once the minutes are approved, you can kind of get rid of those. Just keep the one final version of the minutes on hand. Your club should have a policy about who can create and record the meetings. Don't include members' names on motions made. Just say that a motion was made, seconded, and approved. And distribute minutes within a reasonable time.
Awesome.
All right, that is it for me. I'm going to turn it over. I think, who's up next? Hugh?
I am.
All right, so I will drive and you take it away.
Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about the treasurer and the importance of that role. The treasurer is obviously an exceedingly important role. Not only is just a member of your executive board, but also, I mean, your executive committee, but also just because of all of the things that they have to deal with. So you need to make sure that this is someone that you're very comfortable with. I personally would suggest not making your treasurer this be their first board role, just because they need to have seen how the board works. You know, if they aren't familiar with kind of the process of the club, then it gets to be a little bit challenging for them. So when you are choosing your treasurer, I think that it's very important that, you know, that they understand exactly what they're getting into and all of the roles and responsibilities. So let's talk a little bit about what those responsibilities are. So they have to submit the financial report. Every club meeting, you want to have that balance sheet. You want to have all of the things that came in and went out, and let that, you know, and have them be able to report on that, and so that everybody on your board has a good idea of what the financial situation of the club is, and also so that they can be planning for their own upcoming things. You know, if there's a shortfall, everybody's having to adjust their budgets and things. They pay all the club bills. So typically this is done by check. Right now, I know our club is using PayPal for several things, and then we're just making sure that we're capturing that information and sending it to each other, you know, between me and the treasurer, just so that way we do continue to have that paper trail. But the paper trail is the main important thing to have. You also want to make sure that your treasurer knows that they have to keep all of the financial records, such as all the invoices, statements, you know, any canceled checks, like I said, receipts, things like that, that they are keeping that together. Now, in Triangle, we're lucky our treasurer is an actual CPA. So there's so much of this that she just does by nature. Then also, so this is something that I haven't personally gone through because we've had the same treasurer now for three terms. But at the end of that term, they go through an auditing procedure, and then when they hand off and do succession planning, that makes it a lot easier for the next person to come in and understand it. So that report with the complete files and records are what get handed over. You also have to go through the process of signing that signature card, and you don't want that to be just the treasurer. You want to make sure that you have yourself also on that. Those are the two that we have. We also have one other board member who is on that, and that's right now our past president. Because nobody means to do the wrong thing. All right. So the fidelity bond, you want them to be in charge of that. You have to figure out what the general coverage that you need. And my suggestion would be just look at the last year or the last couple of years and decide on if anything needs to change on that. And it can be secured from a reliable insurance company. So here's some things for them to be thinking about when they are, when they're approaching their job. So whenever you have to get into a contract, you, even if the event isn't, successful, you still have the obligation of paying for it. So you need to, you have to be, as your membership and board of directors are authorized, you have to look at that contract ahead of time. Make sure that at the end of the day, you know that you are going to be able to meet that contract regardless of whether or not you make money on that event. So before you, like for instance, if you're doing it, it's usually going to happen around your addies when you're securing that event space, or if you're securing vendors who are going to be providing food or services at a big event. And then also making sure that you don't have committee members who are negotiating these contracts without, somebody from your executive committee looking over them. I would suggest that you really make sure that yourself or your treasurer is at least glancing over and looking over these contracts before any signatures are made. And it's you guys. Sorry. So are all the terms and conditions understood? This is kind of what I was saying. Everybody looking through it, making sure that you have read the contract, that you completely and totally understand it. And, it seems kind of simple, but you really want to make sure that you go through every detail and that you are certain that you can actually comply with the conditions of the contract. Okay, so your budget. Your budget is extremely important, and putting it together ahead of time really gives you a roadmap. And you can look at your last year's budget as a starting place. So if you've never had to develop a budget, then one of the places that you can do is look at your previous budgets and then just decide how you're going to move or allocate those, and whether or not you feel like you need to, bring your budget down a little bit based on, kind of what your financial health is, or whether you have room to expand it because you're doing a new, from a new program or something like that. So when you have this, it's going to keep those surprises from coming up. Again, a lot of times this happens around programming or events, is that sometimes there's just this unexpected expense, and if you're holding your team to their budget, I will say we use a really cool spreadsheet for ours that's kind of tiered, where each event has its own budget, each program has its own budget, and it all feeds into the master budget automatically. And you're able to put in different line items. And that's a spreadsheet format that I'd be happy to share with anybody if you have it. We have it in Google Sheets, and it just really helps you plan and populate all of your events and your master budget. Okay. you can, this is interesting. You can also use it as the bad guy if you ever need to. Somebody, you can tell them, this is out of budget. You know, it's not going to work because we don't have the budget for it. And if you have a reason to say no. Again, the individual committees should be working on their budget and thinking about what they need to actually bring their programs, you know, into life. Most of your committees aren't going to have much of a problem doing that. Like, you know, if you think about like your diversity, they may have one or two big things, but that, you know, part of their budget may fall under programming. Or you may have your government have one or two things, but then a lot of their budgets might be falling under programming. At least that's the way it works in our club, is that a lot of the budgeting actually ends up coming up through programming, because if our diversity chair is working with programming to create an event, the budget, even though it is being informed by the committee chair for diversity, it's largely also going into that programming budget, because it is kind of killing two birds with one stone. And since the programming person is usually the person with more contacts and ideas about what you know, venue costs and things like that are going to be, then usually they are the ones setting budget for that event. So then the other committees really just have very minor needs for budget. So that's one thing, is to kind of, if you're going your programming budget, letting them really look at it, the people who have the most knowledge about that would help. Being realistic about that, yes. So once your budget's been approved by the board, then you should actually, as part of that monthly report, you need to show how you're meeting your budget, whether you're over budget or whether you're under budget. It, you know, seems like it's basic, but it's part of that treasurer report. And then also it gives you an estimate of like what it's good, because it's not only you know, necessary, but it gives you that estimate for future financial transactions. And if you are, you know, trying to plan for, you know, the future, and, you know, especially if your memberships are short, your budget gives you a way to go in and say, okay, we're short this much on memberships, or we're short this much on income. We need to cut this much, you know, out of future things, and that helps to plan. And then your budget also helps you manage your cash flow. You want to do that by preparing that chart that includes what your historical data is from your bank statements, your budget plans, and your financial reports. And, you know, the key to that is just looking at the patterns that have gone through history, and then making adjustments according to that, you know. So consider incorporating that into your budget process, so that your treasurer's report actually talks about, okay, this is what we have on hand, this is what went in and out, this is what our cash situation is, our cash on hand situation is, and this is where we are meeting our budget. Those, you know, when you hand these, and I would suggest handing these deck, you know, part of this deck over to your treasurer, when they're going through all of that, it just helps them to have that checklist of things to include. Okay, so they also are going to, something that you are going to be working with your membership committee is making sure, and your treasurer will be part of this too, but making sure that you're having timely collection of your club dues, and making sure that those are, you know, happening regularly, and that you don't let it drop. One of the, I mean, I can share some personal experience that we actually had about 4 years ago. The follow-up for club dues and club memberships was kind of left on hold, and the transition was completely lost, and we lost a huge chunk of our membership, and have been in a rebuilding time since then. One of the things that you can look at is setting, especially if you're doing dues online or something like that, you can set it for auto renewal, and allowing people to do that. That is something that our team is currently looking at, so that it just makes it a lot easier if there's an automatic renewal that when they fill out the membership form, they opt into, and you'll find that a lot of people really like that, because they don't have to think about it. A lot of times you'll have people who think that they're members and they're not actually members because they haven't paid their dues. And so, yeah, you really want to be on top of that. And then you want to require your payment in advance. whenever you possibly can, especially like your ticketing and things like that, Eventbrite is really good for that. It allows you to, collect that on hand. You definitely want to accept your credit cards. So the combination for us, we do a lot of through Eventbrite. The combination of Eventbrite and PayPal together has really been successful for us for making sure that we're collecting the fees for events and things like that. So, and then, some of the other tips that we have here are, furnishing a pre-addressed or postage paid business reply envelopes when you send a mailed invoice. Again, our club personally, we've moved pretty much to only online invoicing and digital formats for that. But yes, it will help to make sure that if they're paying by check or if they need to cut that check, that they have a way to just get it back to you quickly. And then again, this depends on your membership structure, but allowing discounts for early payment. We certainly have done that with events. The early bird registration gets a little bit of a discount. And then things that you just want to provide are, guaranteed listing in the roster of the club directory. And then you also want to look at unpaid members regularly. That should be part of your membership chair's responsibility, is to bring unpaid members to the attention of the board every month and making a decision about, whether to extend a grace period or whether or not to, whether they're gone. So, and how to follow up with them and actually keep them back in your club. Okay, so some of the questions about payables are like how you minimize that, the impact of cash disbursements, and then what type of check writing schedule should you be set up on. So here are some suggestions, some tips. You want to use interest-bearing accounts so that you can get that little bit of extra. You want to try to maintain a zero balance in your checking account, and you only want to transfer funds over when you need to cover a check that's written, so that way your funds are not just sitting there in a checking account, just languishing. And then you want to try to negotiate with your bank, since you are a nonprofit, to waive that service charges and the minimum balance requirements. So go in with your treasurer and just be as earnest as you can and try and get some concessions on your account. And then every now and then do a review of your of your bank and comparison shop and make sure that you're still getting the best deal you possibly can. And then a good thing to do with your treasurer is to set up a schedule for check writing, and how are we going to be doing this? What are the days that we're going to cut checks? Ours are every 2 weeks is how we would do it in ours. Okay, so liability, I am handing this one over to Alex.
Now we're getting into the really fun stuff. Don't forget, if you have questions, feel free to type those into the chat box, or if there's something that you have to have answered right now, raise your hand and let us know. But liability, just remember that this is a volunteer board. You are a volunteer, but you still, as an organization, need to do what you can to protect your volunteers and protect you as the president. So incorporation is one way to do so. If you become a corporate entity, you can file things under your club name. You can do your bank account that way. There's lots of things that go into that. Also remember, whenever you're signing anything for your club, sign it, your name, and then write AAF Southwest Virginia, whatever it is. So you're always tying that back to your club. When you have a corporate board of directors, you have members who serve in staggered terms, and making sure that those things, that helps with some of the liability there. Like I said, bank accounts can be opened in that corporate name, and insurance policies can be obtained without having to annually name the individuals who are protected. You have that umbrella insurance as a club. Board insurance is super important. It protects your financial interests. It protects you as a president. It protects your board, your volunteers, staff, if you have paid staff members. Most of our clubs don't, but that's important. So director and officers insurance is very important. It also helps with fraud, or, let's say you have somebody as your treasurer and you did put them in the first time and you don't know them all that well and something goes wrong. Having that insurance is really important. And remember that there are a lot of states that have volunteer immunity that won't hold you completely liable for the actions of your club as a volunteer board member, but it's typically not enough. You still could be financially responsible for something. And again, that's property and liability insurance are the two types that you want to consider. With property insurance, that's protecting your physical assets if you own any computers, your valuable papers, records, if you own any artwork, if you're doing any sort of auctions. We have a couple of clubs that do auctions. All those things can be covered under property insurance. You also want to make sure that you know where your stuff is. Most of us don't have a set club office, so making sure that that is somebody's responsibility to keep up with where all your paperwork is, making sure that all of your paperwork is, if it's in paper form, you know where it's at, and then it's also in digital form too. General liability insurance is protecting you from claims of bodily harm, personal injury, advertising industry, property damage, all of those sorts of things. The biggest thing you want to consider as a club, and you may not have to worry about this as much as a president this year, is serving alcohol. In general, you want to avoid that as much as possible because your liability goes way up when you serve alcohol. I've personally held a lot of ABC licenses. Virginia ABC knows me well, and it is not something that I enjoy doing. So making sure that you have either liquor liability coverage or event liability coverage. Most general liability insurances will allow you to do add-ons throughout the year for big events. So you might have a small Christmas party and you're not too concerned about that. But when you have your American Advertising Awards Gala, you can go and add on extra event liability insurance, and that's something to definitely consider. And again, if you can avoid serving alcohol and it's under your control, avoid it. So if you have a vendor who is, or wherever you're hosting your event, you might want to look for somebody who can serve the alcohol there at a hotel or a restaurant, or you can look for a caterer that carries their own liquor license. Again, it's different in every state, but those are all things that you want to do. Contacting your state board of alcohol and beverage control, they can be a good resource for you as well. And just remember that if you are serving your own alcohol, whoever is doing the serving, they are liable. You are liable as the license holder. So just keep that in mind and make sure that people understand the importance of that when they're serving. Taxes. There's a couple of different ways that your club might be structured. Most of us are 501c6s. Those are membership-based organizations. Think like a chamber of commerce. Some clubs might be 501c3. Those are solely devoted to charitable, educational, scientific, or religious purposes. They are not member-based. The biggest thing that you want to think about is that how your contributions are made. So if you're fundraising, you want to think about that, because if somebody makes you a donation and you are a 501c3, you cannot issue them a tax. I don't know what's going on. The other thing about a 501c6 versus a 501c3, if you're a 501c3, you cannot fundraise for memberships. So if you're a 501c3, you cannot have members. And that's something that can get you into a lot of trouble. Tax exemption means that the IRS has qualified your club as exempt from federal income tax. Under certain provisions of the IRS code, you still need to file a tax return. If you don't take anything else from this, you have to file a tax return. So make sure that's on your calendar, that you know when you do it. You file, you make sure you know when the end of your financial year is. I recently just, as part of my job, took over as Main Street Director. We're a 501c3. Nobody told me last year that our fiscal year ended in May and not June. So I was delinquent in my first year of filing taxes. So make sure you know when your year ends, when you pay taxes. The forms are due on the 15th day of the 5th month after the association's end of the fiscal year. Very important, and again, this is making sure you know where your paperwork is. Anyone who asks is entitled to view a copy of your Form 990 in your club offices or virtual office, wherever you're at. 3 years of the 990s and IRS exemption letter must be available for public inspection upon request. So make sure that you know where your paperwork is. Here, AAF Southwest Virginia, we utilize Google Drive. Cloud-based services for your document management is huge. That way, if something happens and you're not there, people know where your paperwork is. We also use it for meeting minutes. Our bank has required us to have meeting minutes to add somebody as a financial person in our bank account. So we had to have the minutes to show that. We actually do an agenda and we type our meeting minutes in Google Docs on the agenda so that our agenda just gets converted over to our meeting minutes. So that's one way to make sure that, again, you know where your paperwork is. District and national compliance. This is important to be a part of the district and national organization structure. District requires you to have a roster of board members submitted to your state governor prior to the fall leadership conference, which is right now, even though it doesn't feel like fall, it is fall leadership conference. So if you haven't done that, make sure you talk to your board. Everything is, and we know this is a strange time. I'll be honest, we haven't really completely set our slate of leadership yet. So I'm delinquent on this right now. So make sure you talk to your governor and we can help you through that. As Joey said earlier, dues are waived this year. So that's one blessing that you can take from this. Dues payable in accordance with district bylaws. So remember that in another year, you would be paying those. Full membership roster must accompany those dues on payment. And I'm assuming we're still going to be collecting full membership rosters this year. Good. Danielle shook her head yes. So you'll still have to submit a membership roster. You just won't have to pay the dues on it. With AAF National, and that's why we will be submitting our membership rosters, you will submit that roster to AAF National, and then your annual dues per club member, and this happens in January, so right around Addie time. Just remember that you'll have some income coming in for the American Advertising Awards. Annual dues are $30 per club member. You're also going to see more and more national incentives to being a club member. National's been working really hard to have good incentives. They recently added something with constant contact. So there are national benefits to being an AAF member on the local level. And then again, national dues are in accordance to the AAF bylaws. Best practices, follow the D3 calendar deadlines. Those will be sent, if they haven't, I don't think they've been sent out yet, but they will be sent out. Just make sure you add those to your calendar. It's just easier that way. Just once you get it, just take the 10 minutes to get them all added in. You can participate in National Club Achievement Competition and in the Local Quality Club Achievement Competition. A lot of these things that get you recognized are just the things that you have to do anyway. So it doesn't hurt to do it, and you might actually get a pat on the back or even some better incentives to do them. You even can implement a local board competition. So if you've got board members that are hard to motivate, that's another way to do that by adding in incentives to getting these things done. Who to call? Not Ghostbusters in this case. Call your state governor. They're your first help. They're there to help you. We'll help you with anything. It doesn't matter what it is. It might be not understanding Robert's Rules of Order. It might be trying to figure out how to get your treasurer to be a little more motivated and communicating. Whatever it is, we're here to help. There are committee chairs at each of the levels that you have on the district level that you have on your committee. So if you having a problem with programs, you can reach out to the programs committee chair. And then you've got your District 3 leadership. We've all been here. We've all done it. Some of us for more years than we like to admit to. That's why club succession is important. But we've all been there. We've all done it, and we're here to help. And I think that's it. Does anybody have any burning questions?
All right. If anyone does think of questions later, as Alex said, the state governors are always going to be available. Anyone on the district board is available. Tiffany, you see on this call right now, she's available. Reach out to whoever you need and ask those questions, because there's obviously a lot to take in for right now. As far as today goes, remember we have a pretty busy day today and tomorrow. I'm pretty excited about it. Encourage everyone to attend the keynote that's going to happen at 12:30. So here just a little bit, and also the keynote on Saturday. Those are going to be great. And we're going to have Salute to Achievers video, which will be on Facebook Live tomorrow. But go ahead and push that out. I know we kind of said, you know, this is obviously targeted towards board members, but push it out, push those events out to your general membership, because we are not at capacity. We will be happy to take on more participants. So thank you to Alex, Joey, Hugh for doing the session today, and we'll see you guys at 12:30.
Bye, y'all.